Hi guys, welcome to Studio Wildlife. In today's video I thought I'd show you my process for blocking in a painting. So I'm going to show you my process for blocking in a painting. This is by no means the only process. There are loads of different ways and I'll talk about a few of those different ways, and I do use lots of different processes when I am blocking in a painting, but for this video I thought I'd show you and share with you my process that I do for blocking in most of my originals, and share with you some tips that I have for becoming a better painter and creating better paintings. So stay tuned. So my first big tip, this is just a general painting tip, is that not all paintings work the very first time that you do them, and sometimes you just have to give up with a painting, and that's what I've done here. I've basically just been fed up with this painting. I was doing three wolves and I just decided to get rid of it completely and paint over it. And usually when I'm painting over a new painting, or painting over an old painting rather, I will just take whatever paint I've got on my palette, chuck it on that canvas really thickly and give some texture to it. Once I'm happy that all that texture's dried, I will then use a layer of gesso to paint that back to being white so that I've got a nice clean canvas ready to start, and then I'll turn that painting into a form of abstract piece later on, and that's what I'm going to do with this one. Sometimes when I'm starting a new canvas, even if it's a brand new canvas, I will do a couple of layers of gesso over the top just so that I can get it nice and smooth, so it's a nice clean smooth surface for painting those details. So when I'm starting out blocking out a painting, I'll use a small flat brush and I'll just start to draw in the eyes, especially if I'm drawing an animal or a person. I like to start with the eyes and like the middle of the face and really get that positioning right where I want it, make sure everything's equal and copying that reference photo as closely as possible. I do actually start my paintings in different ways. It depends on the type of artwork that I'm creating. If I'm doing a commission or I'm doing a really intricate piece, I tend to actually trace or project my images purely to save time. Especially if it's commission, I will tend to trace quite a lot because I just want to get that done, get that drawing in so that I can actually focus on the painting and putting in the details and actually putting some colour or some charcoal down onto the paper or canvas. I don't recommend doing that as a beginner. As a beginner, I suggest doing it this way, the way that I'm doing in this video, where I'm drawing it in from scratch, blocking it in as I go, and just building up and focusing on colour and shapes. For this one, I'm not really even too bothered about details. I'm just focusing on the big, large shapes of the painting. Drawing in some lines occasionally like I'm doing here for the eyes, but the majority of it, I'm just drawing in the big shapes and focusing on getting my proportions correct, getting those shapes, the correct sizes, the correct positions relative to one another before actually thinking about the details. You probably can't even tell what this is yet, other than the colour gives it away as being a tiger. For me, this is the best way that you can actually learn to draw and learn to paint and improve those basic skills. If you jump straight in by blocking in using things like the grid method, using projector, by tracing, you're not actually developing those basic drawing skills that you need to be a good artist. I mean, I'm just going to say an artist, because again, as I said, I trace, I draw, and well, I'll let you decide whether I'm good or not, but it depends on the person. But traditionally, tracing, projecting is frowned upon, but I obviously don't really care about that. I just think that if you want to get better and to get better as an artist and develop your skills, it's better to avoid not cheating, but it's better to avoid using those little helping hands, those little tools, and just practice drawing yourselves, practice blocking in, practice getting your hand-eye coordination right so that when you visualize things, you see them and you can just copy those exactly down onto the canvas using your hands, using your paint, using your charcoal, whatever it is you're doing. I do see quite a lot of people using the grid method, and that is good for creating realistic artwork, but what I do see a lot of beginners doing is they draw in these lines in really dark, thick pencil, and they don't cover them up in the painting, so you can actually see those grid lines showing through in the finished painting, and that just looks very amateurish. So if you are going to use that grid method, make sure you use a very, very light pencil. You could even block them in paint so that they get covered up or they form part of the painting. But make sure you get rid of those grid lines by the end of the painting, otherwise it just looks a bit naff. Another tip that I have for blocking in paintings is start with a big brush. So the bigger the brush, the better, because that then makes it more difficult to get lost in the details and a lot easier to cover large open spaces and block in those big shapes that you should be focusing on when you're starting a painting. I can't really talk too much about getting lost in details because when I do start painting, I do actually tend to get lost in the details quite a little bit and focus a little bit too much on those details and too much on that drawing rather than blocking in the shapes, but it's something that even I'm still practicing as I go. I think the only way to get better is to just practice, and that is something that I do with every single painting. I do feel like I'm learning something from every single piece of artwork that I create, and I'm remembering those things that I'm learning, and I'm striving to improve. The only way that you'll get better is if you want to and you actively try and learn things. So I think the photo that I got this from is from Pixabay. I'm using Pixabay as a reference source. It's good for getting some unlicensed, I think is the terminology, but getting some pictures that you can use for free. You can't just take pictures from the internet. So if you are starting a painting, make sure you have properly sourced your reference material. Even better, take your own photos. And I've got a video showing just how we go about taking our photos. Me and Amber, we went to the zoo and we just talked through some tips for taking pictures at the zoo, so go and check that out. If you are enjoying the video, please make sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. It means so much to us, it really helps us out. And tell us a little bit about yourself in the comments, because I do really want to get to know you guys. Think about the things that you would like to see, what you'd like to learn about, what paintings I can put out for you, and just help you develop in your artistic journey as well. So when I'm blocking in a painting, I tend to pick a colour that will be a dominant colour throughout the painting. So this one is a tiger, so I'm using a burnt sienna to block it in. Anywhere that's white, even if it looks like it's white on the photo, isn't actually going to be white in real life. So I don't put that white paint down. I like to use very dark colours when I'm starting off, so anywhere that's white I use a mix of Payne's Grey and Burnt Umber to create this sort of browny grey colour where I'll block in the areas that are going to be white in my painting. But again, I won't use pure white in the final piece. I will use some off-whites, usually mixed with a bit of Payne's Grey if it's a bluier area or a colder area, mixed with a burnt sienna if it's a warmer area. So I am painting a tiger here. As you've probably seen, I have loads and loads of tiger videos because they are my favourite animal to paint. So you will see more and more tiger paintings as we go through the year and as I keep uploading to YouTube, so I hope you like them. But if there are any other animals that you would like me to paint, please just let me know in the comments. So another tip that I have for developing paintings, and specifically for blocking in, is don't be afraid to make mistakes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right? This blocking stage, as long as you're getting your proportions mostly correct, as long as you're getting everything right and you're focusing on those shapes, it will all fall together. And as you're progressing through the painting, things that maybe seem a little bit off or don't seem quite right, you can always just paint over them and start again and adjust them with the paint. That's one of the benefits of paint. You can always do it again. You can always paint over the top of it and cover up those mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes aren't even that bad. Sometimes those mistakes are the best part of the painting. And it's just about looking at them and seeing if your areas of the painting all work together, fit together to create a nice, appealing final piece. Really, I should have used a bigger brush when I was painting the background, but I didn't have one to hand, so I'm just using this smaller brush, which took me a little bit longer than I would have liked. But it still allowed me to refine that drawing a little bit more and to establish those darker areas, the background, and just refine the shape of that head, because as I originally drew it, it was a bit fat, it was a bit wide, so just by using that background to actually cut away parts of my drawing, it allowed it to become a little bit better. And I studied that reference photo I was using and really refined the shape of that head using the background to cut away parts of the image, rather than just drawing a straight solid line and actually drawing it out like a picture. It's better to use parts of the background and those big blocks of shapes to actually create your edges, rather than having a background, a foreground, and then a line between them. That's no good. If you're aiming for realism, you want to look for those hard and soft edges and create those hard and soft edges without drawing physical lines, and just the barrier between the two areas forming those lines themselves. So once I've actually started blocking in and put some colours down and just put a base coat over the canvas, I'll actually then start to refine the drawing a little bit more using a more detailed brush. So usually I'll use a small filbert brush or a small 1/2 inch square brush, and I'll just draw in the basic shapes. Again, just refine them in a little bit more detail. For this tiger, by refining it, I actually mean adding the stripes. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just adding the stripes using a small filbert brush. And I am studying my reference photo closely, but I'm actually working from 2 reference photos for this one, not just one. Because I liked the positioning of one tiger, but I didn't quite like the shadows and I didn't quite like the stripes. So I'm using the shape and positioning of one and the stripes and the shadows of another picture, just to sort of create a more pleasing piece, or a more pleasing piece in my opinion anyway. Don't be afraid to change your reference photo as well. So that is another tip. Don't be afraid to move away from that reference photo. You don't have to stick to it. You are an artist, you're creating something new, you don't have to create an exact copy of a photograph. Sometimes I do, because I think the photographs that I sometimes use are amazing, and I do use some fantastic photographers that I usually share through my Instagram. So if you do want to check out my Instagram and see some of those fantastic photographers, please head over to @dwilsonart and go and follow me. I've also set up a TikTok account, so if you want to see some little videos, things that I don't post on my Instagram or post on my YouTube channel, please go and head over to TikTok. It's Studio Wildlife, nice and simple. Go and check that out and go and follow us. So again, when you're blocking in paintings, study that reference photo, but don't be afraid to make changes. But for things like tigers, for things like realistic animals, realistic wildlife, you do really want to be working from that reference photo as closely as possible, because you do tend, especially as a beginner, to start making things up. You're painting the things that you're thinking rather than the things that you're seeing. And the best way to actually improve that and stop yourself doing that is actually to paint from life. So if you paint from life, you're actually seeing the things that are there rather than imagining things in your head. So when you're painting from a photograph, you are imagining a tiger, you're imagining its movements, because all you've got is a flat image. Whereas if you're actually painting something from life, you're picking up on the shadows, the way that the reflections hit it, the way that the cast light, or the cast shadows, I don't really know the terminology, but the way that the different lights and the form of those objects that you're painting, you are actually visualising that yourself. You don't have to imagine it, you're not converting it from a 2D photograph to a 3D image and then painting it. It's 3D there, you're actually experiencing the object that you're painting. And getting better at drawing from life will directly transfer to your skills at painting from photographs, because you'll understand the forms, you'll understand all of the contrast, the tones, the values that you will need to create a 3D painting, whether that's painting people, landscapes, or animals. If you learn to draw from life and paint from life, it will directly improve your painting skills. Another quick tip, if you are blocking in a painting and you're worried about proportions and you're worried about things looking correct, get a mirror and hold up your painting next to a mirror. Because if you hold it up next to the mirror, it will flip it, it will reverse the image, and it will make it more obvious where things aren't quite correct. So if the eyes are too high, one of them's too low, if the nose isn't quite central, if it's a little bit lopsided, using that mirror will allow you to easily see those differences. And if you are trying to paint a perfect copy of a photo, then I advise taking a picture of your painting, comparing it on a computer next to a picture of the thing that you're trying to paint, and look at where those differences are and then adjust as necessary. My absolute biggest tip for you though, if you do want to get better at painting and you're struggling with your blockings and you're struggling with actually getting proportions correct, is just to practice. Practice as much as you possibly can. So I paint and draw every single day, even if it's a small painting or just some sketches. I just try and find the time every single day to try and learn something new and trying to improve. So if it is blocking in your paintings that you struggle with, get a canvas, block in a painting and then get rid of it, and then block in a painting and then get rid of it, and just repeat that process over and over and over again until you're getting better at analysing the forms and the structures and the shapes and getting it perfect. Start off simple, so maybe start off by arranging a still life with some bottles or some cans and just try and pick out the basic shapes that you see, and then progress and progress and progress until you're doing the subject that you want to actually paint, whether that is landscapes, whether that is people, whether that is animals. But again, focus on those shapes and simplify that piece as much as possible and build your details over the top of those simplified structures. Practice, practice, practice is the best way to improve. People always ask, like, wow, how did you get so good? You must be really talented. Honestly, it's not talent, it is just practice. I've just practiced and painted for hours and hours, probably thousands of hours. Not 10,000 hours, I'm not a master or anywhere near close to mastering my painting skills, but I have put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and done lots of practice to get to where I am now. But for me, personally, I'm not sure what level you guys are at, so if you are a beginner, try and draw, try and paint, try and do it as much as possible from your own skills rather than using technology to help you. So don't use a projector, don't use grid methods. It's not technically technology, but don't use a grid method because you'll just not develop that eye for being able to create and draw things. You'll not be able to use a reference photo properly, or not properly, because you'll still be able to use a reference photo. There's no such thing as properly in art, but you won't be able to use it to get the desired effect that you want, that realism. If you're going for abstract painting, do what you want. If you are going for slightly abstract, slightly real, anything that you want that involves realism or even slight realism, you want to learn to draw by yourself. You don't want to be tracing, you don't want to be using the projectors. The sooner you can do that and develop your skills, the quicker your paintings will get. At first, it will be difficult. Your paintings will not look like this. They won't look like mine. They won't look like other artists that you've seen out there because they've been doing it for years. But the fastest way to develop all of your skills as an all-round artist is to draw yourself. Not yourself, you're not doing a picture of yourself, you can do it if you want, but it's to draw without the need for these little aids. Save those aids for when you know you can draw it. Save those aids for when you need to speed up paintings for commissions. Save them for big pieces that maybe you need that projector for, but always draw things out first. Learn to do it. The reason that I am comfortable with using a projector, using that grid method if I need to, and tracing is because I know that I could draw it if I had the time. But because I'm doing two jobs, I'm doing this, doing the YouTube, running the Instagram, starting a TikTok, writing the website, and teaching biology full time, I don't have time to spend hours getting my pictures perfect. I have to trace them and project them so that drawing is done really quickly so I can get straight to the painting process. That being said, there's still loads of paintings that I like to do completely from scratch, drawing myself, just because I find them a little bit more fun. And I do actually think my paintings that I have done myself, although not necessarily proportionally as accurate as a traced one, they are actually better paintings. They've got a bit more life, they've got a bit more interest, and they're the ones that I enjoy doing more. So I really hope the tips that I've shared with you in this video are helpful and you've enjoyed watching the video. If you have, again, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because it does mean so much to us, and please comment on the videos. We like hearing from you, even if it's just to say you enjoyed the video. We absolutely love that. If it's to say you've got some improvements, tell us, because I'd love to hear that as well. I like hearing other people's opinions and how I can improve, because it's the only way to grow, really. So yeah, thank you so much, and as always, remember to head over to studiowildlife.com for more wildlife art tips. I also sell prints of my work on there, so if you want to get your hands on a print, you can head over to my website and buy them directly through my website. They are on offer at the minute. Thanks for watching, see you next time.